You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, welcome to The Bounding Box. All right, so we have a first today, people. A first. I have a return guest. I mean, he was so excited. He had to come back, right? That's how awesome this guest is. So let me go ahead and introduce Russell Roberts. So, Russell, once again, one more time, tell me who you are. What's your problem?
Ooh, I'm Russ Roberts. I'm a product engineer on the online team. I work on a whole bunch of different things between map viewer, web styles, both 2D and 3D. So those are like this how you're going to style your features. Publishing your own symbol sets, also like fonts and labeling, whole bunch of things. So I can cover search, anything. So I cover a range of topics that we can talk about.
So if people are familiar, Russ was a guest number one on this podcast, along with Paul Barker and Chris Whitmore. I had the ArcGIS Online Rockstar team come on. Basically, those three are three people that if I need an online question answer, I'm hitting up one of those three. Then they usually point at each other like the Spider-Man meme, right? They're like, "Oh, you gotta ask Paul, or you gotta ask Russ, or no, Chris would know that one." So Russ. All right, Russ, you are the online guy. You do a lot of really cool stuff there. You manage a lot of things, right? A lot of things going on with online, different teams, stuff like that. So what's the latest and greatest things people can expect from the next online release, which is just around the corner?
Oh, so that one, there's a lot. There's so much that's coming into it. I even made a couple of notes on it because there's just so much stuff that's kind of coming in. It's on the 3D side, hopes to bring in to scene layer editing and being able to leverage what was originally released on Pro. I think the last release was the 3D object feature layer, which you could have take a GLTF and you have your PBRs materials and be able to have those leveraged within your a 3D object feature class. And so we're going to support that and publish a feature layer and a scene layer. So that will support an editing workflow and being able to have these kind of rich looking objects in your web scenes. And then for map viewer, a whole bunch of things there as well. A big one, bringing in pretty much the rest of the analysis tools. So we did release analysis in map viewer in February, yeah. and so that was bringing up the map viewer to map viewer classic parity. And so we released our first round of analysis tools, and we're going to add in kind of the rest of that you expect and that you use within map viewer classic into the map viewer. We did introduce upload your own images in map viewer as well for your point symbols. And that was originally supporting PNGs, JPEGs, and GIFs. And we're now going to leverage SVGs. And I think this is something that you worked on too, Renee, on the API side. And so we have a symbol server, and that'll take your SVGs and convert that symbol structure into SIM. And so that way you can kind of create your own vector symbols and use them within web maps. And so that way you get these rich looking symbols, and they're vectorized. So that means you can do color replace, that kind of cool stuff in it, versus with a static image that you upload like a PNG or JPEG. They're not simified vector. And so there's no masking or anything in that simple picture marker case. So using SVGs in the symbol server, I think it's pretty cool. I can't wait. It just something I started testing out this week.
Neat. That's gonna be really cool. And yeah, that was a really great feature they got in there to have it output SV. And people be surprised when they start using it because it takes some pretty complex SVGs and outputs something usable, right? It's a trick.
Yeah, it's pretty, and that's just it. And that's what I've been throwing at it too. All these very kind of complex SVGs, and making sure the output aligns with what you expect, with the image that you saw in the SVG, it looks just like what you're using within now with this layer in the map viewer, and then you're saving it to your web map, and we'll retain that, that SVG will stay in your app data so that way you can use it's not just tied to one single web map or layer. It's something that, it's in the browser cache so that way you can use it across multiple,
Oh,
different maps or layers.
I,
So,
I, I'm,
and then
I'm.
you could use it in Sketch as well too. So it's not just for styling. You could use it in Sketch
Oh, really? I
for
didn't know
marking
that.
up your,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah.
Damn, that is
So
nice.
yeah, so that's one that we wanted to get in. We've just kind of been breaking out the image upload in different steps for symbols, and so this next one with SVG, I think, really kind of rounds it off for all the different kind of file types. And uh, vector symbols are awesome. So coming from someone that works on web styles, and you would use Pro to publish these vector symbols to online in a web style. Now you can just take your SVG and drop it in, and boom, there you go.
That is neat. So, yeah, a few folks are going to be using that to bust out your Inkscape and stuff, and start playing with some cool SVG bits. And they're great because
Yeah,
they once they're converted to sim and stuff, they scale really well, right? So
yeah.
I wouldn't go nutty because they might not. They'll look kind of weird if you just have all these complex points on the map or something. But you can do some cool stuff. So that's neat.
Yeah, exactly. And like, let's say you're using it for like clustering, you had
Oh
symbols and you're using
yeah,
clustering, and you have all the different sizes and stuff based on your cluster scale ranges and stuff, um, or size range. Like, you want them to all look crisp and good instead of like, depending on the size of like if you're using like a JPEG and it was small and then you have this like massive cluster, you might get a blurry output. So this doesn't give you that.
all right, Russ. So you also do quite a few blog posts on the Esri blog. And I was telling you before, I was reading this one. Well, okay, I read the headline, "Bringing Order to Complexity." I didn't actually read the full blog. I was pretty bad at it, but I read the headline and I was captivated. What are you talking about? What's going on here? What's bringing order to complexity?
Yeah, and this one has a bunch of different like I'll talk about stuff that we're working on too that we want to improve upon this too. And this is really funny. I published the two things before I say it. I did the like image upload blog post, and then I like rolled this one out like a week later, and everyone wanted image upload. And then you bring in this more complex problem as well, which is this complexity one, or bringing order to complexity. And that one didn't get as many hits, but I did see like EDU kind of users and community kind of like, yes, this is like the first step into like what we wanted. And so what is it? uh, so what we introduced in the last release, so the February release of Map Viewer, is to be able to, when you're using the type style, being able to group those values into your own pretty much like categories. So like if you have like a list of 25 values, I think in the blog I had like a case of, let's say, like I was looking at doing a forest survey, kind of tracking damage done to the forest. And there was like kind of two main factors. There was like insect damage and disease. And so those are two different types of damage done to the forest, but they're in the same feature layer, and I'm styling them. But I want to break it out to the user so that way, like when you're looking at the legend or when I'm creating order within the like type style itself, I can create this group around it so that way I could classify like, these 10 values as insect and drop it in with this group. And then the other group, I'll take the rest of those types values that are disease based and give it the title disease and drop those values in it as well. And so then that shows up in the legend. And then the next thing that we added to this as well, which also brings that order, we introduced a way. So in the type style and in predominance, we brought in the option to actually display the features in the way that they are ordered within this types list. So the like whatever the topmost value within your like unique value type list was, and you had this option enabled, that'll be the topmost drawn feature within the map. And as you go down that list, they've drawn that same order. So like I think it was like a year ago, we introduced feature display order, which isn't really wrapped into any of the styles. And it was on the properties panel, and it was only based on numeric fields and dates. And that solved like a certain number of like use cases for users. But a lot of people are like, I'm using the type style. This is my predominant feature, this top one in my list and the top one in my legend. And I want that to be like the most apparent feature in the map as well. And so just by flipping on this switch, it kind of puts that kind of ordering within the map itself. And so like what you see in the legend is the same kind of like drawing order for that kind of feature layer. So it's two kind of a two-pronged kind of approach of bringing more order into it, like, creating these like groupings, categories within the type style and making your legend more kind of descriptive and easier to kind of give it a title and a heading. And then the next is that kind of drawing order.
So it looks like the drawing order is an opt-in option, right? Like
Yes.
if you just want
Yeah.
like these are important values I want my legend to show at the very top, but I don't necessarily want them drawn in the order. You don't have to, right? Everything's just kind of like set the way you
Yeah.
want. And like looking at the blog post, it just looks like you can like drag and drop pieces in the legend into the groups and stuff that you want them in, which is really convenient. It's like
Yeah.
super easy to do. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, and that's what we want. So that was the first one, and that works really good for, I think, like the entry into like this ordering and grouping with the types values. And then like what we want to do next and what we're hoping to roll out throughout this year, it's bringing in more bulk actions. And this was like the next thing. As soon as we kind of did our user studies, and once we rolled it out with the release 2, the next question, and which was already on our roadmap, was I want bulk actions. I want to be able to select these 5 values and just say boom, move to this existing group or move to a new group. Or the next one was, especially like in that example that I listed, it's like, okay, here's my group. I just want to apply a types color ramp to this one
Ah,
group.
okay.
And so instead of having to like manually like go through each one and want to color the specific each value within that group to follow a color scheme, we're like, cool, let's bring in the way to kind of just do a bulk kind of like coloring and styling to it. And so
Oh
color
wow, now
ramps the
that's
first
interesting
one.
because that's like almost treating a one layer as two visually, right? That's
Yeah,
cool. I
yeah,
didn't think about that.
yeah, yeah. It makes it really cool and interesting. And then another one that we want to do, and Pro will be doing this as well with 3.2, being able to merge these kind of these types together. The like I keep calling them classes in my head, but these classes within your types, being able to take multiples of them and merge them into a single value. So if you have like value A, B, and C, you can select those and say, I want to merge this into a single value. So that way you don't have it like, let's say they're all using the same symbol and color and they're showing up 3 times in your legend. Well, hey, just merge it into one kind of single kind of class within the types value, and then you get like a single row within your legend. So that's what we
Oh,
want to
that's
do
sweet.
next.
That's cool. That's a really nice update. I dig that one.
Yeah, yeah. They're like fun. They're like cool little tweaks. We didn't have enough time to get it all in for this release, but that's like we kind of have it staged for the next kind of couple of releases how we want to roll it out.
Awesome. And I gotta ask you, Russ, because this was a recent change that you broke. You broke search on the platform, right? You're the man responsible for why search works a little different than what people were used to, right? And you got a whole blog
Yes.
post that explains it and
Yep.
stuff like that. And I read the blog post, but I don't understand. Um,
Yep.
what happened to search, Russ? And why the change? I know the change was important, but just explain what happened there. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And yeah, it's an important change, and it's one that we had to make, especially as like we're growing. So like what we were kind of noticing with the old way that search was working, we were just kind of like so like the search layer-based searching. So if you had like a feature layer, a hosted feature layer, or a feature layer, and you in the web maps configured uh, a feature search based off of that layer of like, I want to look at, let's say the case that we were saying, that was like, I want to look at a name or address, and it writes that kind of like that contains query. So I want to see like find addresses, and I just want to use like kind of like a light search where enter in values and I can find like a containing value. And the way that that search would work before we made the change was it would just be a like simple where clause with like a double wildcard on either side.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was as soon as we hit like 3 characters, we'd start hitting suggestions to you as well, which would be a double wildcard, and we'd start and then you start typing in more, and then more queries would get fired off. And what we're noticing, the traffic, if especially if your map would go viral and you had this like where clause this like layer-based search going in, it could cause some instability to your hive because we're doing like all these kind of like double wildcard searches and suggestions and queries, and it just starts multiplying uh, pretty wildly
I mean,
for like
it's
the
basically just thrashing the back end, right? You're thrashing the DB with all these wildcard searches and stuff, and
yeah
things start getting wonky and whatnot in your apps, right?
yeah and it gets pretty like it can get pretty heavy at times, and like because there's no character based matching or whatever like pattern that was like taking place that kind of like help it out. And so we have we were looking into and like working on like full text searches, and then we started noticing like this issue was like kind of growing as like maps were getting bigger, the traffic volume was getting bigger. It was a change that we were going to have to make, especially as we start looking at like maps that are being used for disaster response and like other high traffic kind of like maps that you don't want to cause a traffic jam for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so we were like, okay, we have this full text search solution. So what full text does, it's a full text index. And so when you author that layer-based search on the web map settings or in like an instant app, it will kind of send that kind of like index creation call. And what that does, it will index that field that you have kind of authored that contains search against. And so we're no longer doing the double wildcard in that case. Uh, what it does, it's kind of like tokenizing every single kind of like uh, character, or I mean, every like set of like characters that are separated by like a dash or a space. And so when you do that search, we've already had the that field has already been indexed. And so we have this kind of registered of tokenized characters that we can compare against. And it greatly increases the performance. And so like when we were looking at some of these like heavy hitter maps, things that would have taken like 30 to 45 seconds to return a result, just because of the complexity, the number of features, we were getting it in like, a second.
nice.
And the other thing too, when these some of these bigger queries that were in the double wildcard that were taking so long, people would kind of like cancel it, retry again, cancel, and like and just so the performance wasn't there. And so when we made this switch to it, it was just a huge leap into like the performance. Yes, we had to make a slight change in that like how our search was performing, and to being to like with switching from like the double wildcard to like the full text, where we had to make that kind of switch. But in the end, it was kind of like for the hopefully the greater good,
Yeah.
and we can always like improve it all along as we like get feedback on it. But yeah, bringing stability to like your organizations and other organizations was a big kind of like, okay, we need to do this because
And it was a tough one too because it's not the kind of thing you could kind of like transition into, right? I mean, it's either you do it or you don't. So there was a lot of notification about it. This letting people know, hey, this change is going to happen, this release, blah blah blah. You had like I said, you got the blog post talking about it and stuff. So giving people a heads up. But not everyone reads a blog, and not everyone's looking at the Ezra community, and they don't know, so they'll call up or hit you up about,
yeah.
hey, what happened here? Something's different, So, but yeah,
Yeah, it was a hard one, but it was also like we started seeing some of the scenarios where you really need your data to be reliable and you want these searches to succeed in these like emergency situations, and you're like, okay, cool, here we go. And we made it easier. So we made that change in November, and like now you can create these indexes on your fields without even creating a web map. So like the developer case, you could just go to the feature layer item itself and say, oh, I want to create a full text index on like this field. And so instead of having to leverage the web map to kind of do that generation, or the instant app to do that generation for you, you can just do it through the
oh,
hosted
that's
feature
cool.
layer item.
Nice. I'm gonna try that. I haven't given that a shot yet, but that sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can do and you can do some cool stuff. We haven't exposed it, but like there's other things that you can kind of like expand out the query on full text. So full text can get cool and more powerful too as we like look into what we want to
Oh,
do next with
another
it.
blog post, Russ?
Oh, there will always be another blog post. That's
Oh, nice, man. All right, Russ. So I want to be respectful of your time here and just everything. I know you're busy. It's a work morning, man. Come on. Uh,
it's a
so
work afternoon for me. I'm on the
oh,
East
that's right. I
Coast.
forget about you. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a work afternoon for you. Oh my gosh, Russ. All right, man. So as usual, any tips, tricks, or anything else for listeners out there you want to drop?
Ooh, I just say like for people doing like I think my this is mine because this is my baby too. Like people wanting to do more advanced styling, like really check out my blogs and like the Esri community where like I'm very active as well. I'm like publishing our own web styles because and sharing them out because I wanted to see what people are using, like where we now support like hatch fills on these symbol styles in Map
Ah,
Viewer. Like that was a huge one, and like marker fills as well, and like randomize and get crazy and put a GIF in there to do make something
I
wild.
was gonna ask, can I animate my marker fills?
You can. So when you like publish, if you publish it with a picture marker fill and you're using a GIF for the picture marker, you'll get the animation properties like in Pro. And you can set those however you want and publish them up as a web style or even just in the web map itself when you're using like the advanced kind of like sim symbols. And we'll support it in symbol styler and you could adjust them yourself. So if you want the change like the loop rate or the speed or
Oh,
whatever, you can tweak that kind of stuff. So there's those like kind of hidden little gems of like, oh, I want to show this, or your marker placement. Like, do you want it to be like a grid, or do you want it to be randomized? How much randomized? We support that in the map viewer, so it's
that's
cool
gonna be
stuff.
awesome for water bodies and stuff like that. Oh man. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's neat.
Awesome, Russ. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. I'll be talking to you later. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bounding Box today. Please subscribe for more content.